Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 17th of May 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, well, this will be a special report because we're going to focus entirely on this particular piece of news, which is the fact that Nintendo has started to issue widespread automated copyright claims, which allow them to monetize and claim all the revenue from existing videos involving certain pieces of Nintendo footage. Could this be the death of Let's Play? We will talk a little bit about that rather sensationalist title in this show. I'm going to focus on this, and I've got a lot of information and discussion for you. So all of that and the OC Remix track of the day are coming your way right about now. Nintendo has instituted a series of automated copyright ID claims on YouTube. The effect of this is that existing videos containing Nintendo footage will be claimed by Nintendo themselves, and ads will be run on said footage, the revenue going directly to Nintendo. This is also affecting videos that were previously claimed by others, with the content ID match overriding this and rerouting the revenue directly to Nintendo. Nintendo issued the following statement, which says, as part of our ongoing push to ensure Nintendo content is shared across social media channels in an appropriate and safe way, we became a YouTube partner, and as such, in February 2013, we registered our copyright content in the YouTube database. For most fan videos, this will not result in any changes. However, for those videos featuring Nintendo-owned content, such as images or audio of a certain length, adverts will now appear at the beginning, next to, or at the end of clips. We continually want our fans to enjoy sharing Nintendo content on YouTube, and that is why, unlike other entertainment companies, we have chosen not to block people using our intellectual property. A Let's Player by the name of Zach Scott, who has 194,000 subscribers, was the first to break this news on Reddit, and then everything spread all over the place with Nintendo issuing an official statement. Okay, this is a very complex topic, so let's get something out of the way first. I am not qualified to discuss the legal ramifications of this. Most people aren't qualified to discuss it. The reason most people aren't qualified to discuss it is because the law that covers this kind of activity is woefully out of date. So what would eventually end up happening if no legislation was put in place to cover it would be most likely that it would eventually go to court, and then a precedent would be set by one of the higher courts, which would have to then be adhered to. That is a whole different can of worms, and I have no intention of going into that. Quite frankly, you guys shouldn't either, because you don't know enough. If you happen to be a US IP lawyer that specializes in digital law, then by all means, you can discuss it, but I guess that's not very many of you. What I do want to discuss today are the real-world implications of this particular decision. Okay, so let's start with the notion of who owns what. Again, taking this away from the legal standpoint, we have a very interesting and unique situation with video games versus any other form of media. Now, if you uploaded, say, the latest movie cut into 10-minute chunks with your commentary over the top of it, then you are, for the most part, going to run into a lot of problems. What will end up happening to you is that your content will be claimed or flagged or removed. Why? Because you're basically just posting a video of you talking over a movie. And the footage of the movie is what's providing most of the entertainment there. There is a reason why something like Riff Tracks, for instance, has to release its audio separately. There are some situations where they have the license to release the full video. But for the most part, Riff Tracks, which is a humorous audio commentary meant to be played as a movie goes along, it's riffing on the movie, has to be purchased as a separate audio file. That's fine, you can't stop people from doing that, but you can stop people from posting the footage of the movie. And in the case of Riff Tracks, there's only certain movies like B-movies, for instance, like Psycho 2, for instance, that they actually have the rights to do that with. So, why is that different to video games? The reason it's different to video games is that movies are a non-interactive medium. That means that regardless of how you play it out, without you directly altering the footage, that movie is going to be the same regardless. Video games, on the other hand, are not like that. They are an interactive medium. That means that you play a video game in a different way to the way that everybody else does. Now, there are only certain things you can do because you must play within the rule set that is put forward by the game itself, and there are many other examples, say scripted sequences, preset voice acting, as well as cutscenes that are going to be identical to everybody else's, because you just can't do anything to that. Now, the majority of games consist of gameplay rather than pre-scripted stuff, unless, of course, you happen to be Metal Gear Solid 4, but you get the point. The notion is that because you actually play the game yourself and you do so in a different way, you transform the work in some respect. It becomes yours. It becomes unique. Now, again, we're not talking about the legal side of things. We're talking about common sense. We're talking about real-world applications. And we're speculating on the notion that you can play a game and the gameplay itself is something that you have done, ergo you should own that gameplay. And the awkward point then becomes, but what about the game? These guys own the game. You own the gameplay. Where do you draw the line? This gets very, very complicated very, very quickly. It's compounded by the fact that games inherently are going to be different, and they're going to a greater or lesser extent, rely on the inputs of the player. There are some games that are very much about a big cinematic experience. A lot of it's scripted, there's a lot of voice acting, a lot of cutscenes, where the player input doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. There are other games where the player input is essentially required for anything to happen. The game is just a rule set. It's the difference between watching a movie and playing a game of chess. The game of chess doesn't play itself out. The movie does. The movie is a preset piece of content. What you can add to it is fairly limited. And most of the time, you're probably going to detract from it because you're talking over the movie, which is really dumb. Something to learn, I think, there when it comes to YouTube content creation. But when it comes to a game of chess, you are the one who has to move the pieces. In the case of a game of chess, you could move the pieces incorrectly. That would still be something that you did. The opponent might not like it, but you can change the rule set yourself. In a video game, you can't really change the rule set, but you can do an awful lot more within that rule set than you could just, of course, by watching a movie, because you have no input into what is happening in that movie. You can then, of course, compound that by differentiating content for single-player games versus content for multiplayer games. Competitive multiplayer games, for instance, I have never believed that you can let's play a competitive multiplayer game, simply because all of the input and all of the entertainment value in that is coming from you, your teammates, and your competition. It's not coming from the game. That simply provides a framework for your actual gameplay to flourish from. If you wanted to compare it to the current situation, it's like suggesting that football players should not be paid for their game of football because somebody else invented football. That doesn't make any actual sense at all. The game is only happening because of the players, and the game's going to play out differently every time as a direct result of that, and that action, that play within a specific rule set, is what is getting them paid in the first place. It's that competition that makes that happen. But you compare that to a single-player game, and that's kind of a different matter entirely. Unless you play a single-player game in a very specific way, usually a way that is extremely skillful and sets you apart, then one could argue that the majority of the work is being done by the game and not by you as the player. And when that happens, you have to think to yourself, well, who exactly should be getting paid here, and should that even be a factor? So let's talk about that idea. The idea that Nintendo basically wants money for what some would see as their work. That's one of the arguments that's being put forward in favor of Nintendo, so suggesting the idea that you should not be getting paid ad revenue for playing somebody else's game, yeah? If Nintendo developed a video game and released that video game, and then you went on YouTube and made a bunch of money from that video game, you shouldn't have the right to do that because they made the video game in the first place. Now, I don't necessarily believe in that. I think my stance on YouTube Let's Players is fairly well known. I don't really like Let's Playing in its current form. I like the old form of Let's Play, the original form where a lot more work was put into the game, and the focus was on showcasing the game, not on showcasing the person playing it. YouTube Let's Playing is very personality-driven, it's very cult of personality-driven, and more often than not, it isn't the game that really matters, it's actually the person playing it. However, that in itself can be viewed as a counter-argument to the notion that Nintendo should be the one making money off this kind of stuff. It doesn't actually matter what game they're really playing. There will be variants based on the game, there's no real doubt about that. If someone were to let's play some ridiculously obscure game versus playing the latest and greatest, depending on the channel, there very well might be a difference in viewership. However, you will still notice that the majority of viewership comes in because of the person and not because of the game. Yogscast's a pretty good example of that. they will consistently bring in a large audience for whatever they do, even if their biggest audience comes from Minecraft. People are coming to watch the Yogscast, not to watch Minecraft. And there you have to distinguish the idea that just because you created the game, you're entitled to anything and everything that was derived from it, because in reality, people are not coming to see your game to begin with. You are not the draw. You are simply a canvas upon which these guys paint. Now, again, don't get me wrong, a lot of these guys I just don't like, and there are times when I scratch my head and I'm like, how did YouTube get to this point? Why is it that these people that are screeching over video games and getting millions of views are rolling in money? Why is that? That kind of sucks. But here's the thing. That's petty. And this is where a lot of these counter-arguments are coming from. Pettiness and jealousy. Some people seem to have the notion that these guys should get a real job. That's the most imbecilic thing I've heard in ages. Really? In this job market, you really want these people also looking for jobs on the same market as you are? Are you out of your minds? Yeah, let's just go to the job tree and pick myself a job, yeah. Load myself into my job cannon and fire me over to Jobland and so on and so forth. Absolutely ridiculous idea. Ridiculous idea, based in pettiness and jealousy. That is not a counter-argument. You don't get to say, oh, you can't do it because it's not a real job in my eyes. Who appointed you judge, jury, and executioner? Yeah, that would be nobody. Nobody cares about your opinion. The fact is that this territory is very much unexplored. You can't let's play a movie, you can't let's play a book, you can't let's play traditional forms of static media. Video games, however, are interactive, dynamic media, and the input of the player is vital to turning it into something else entirely. And that varies from game to game, which makes it super complicated. If every game was like chess, then this wouldn't even be a factor. No one would be arguing, yeah, the guy who invented chess should really be getting a big cut of this. No one would say that. Hell, even if I used someone's chess set. Yeah, I bought this chess set from Chessco. They are entitled to 80% of the ad revenue because I'm playing a game of chess on it. No, they're not. At all. That's ridiculous. The most they might be entitled to is seeing their logo somewhere on there. The idea that you see the logo on the football, for instance, when they happen to be a sponsor of the event, but at the end of the day, they also pay money for that. You can get a football from anywhere. These guys pay money for that privilege. Are Nintendo paying money for the privilege of being marketed via the medium of Let's Plays? No, they're actually trying to do the opposite. Now, is Let's Playing actually a legitimate form of marketing? Because this is an argument that I've seen bandied about in favor of Let's Players versus Nintendo. Is that free advertising? It can be, but so can piracy. And that's what the counter-argument's going to end up being from a lot of people. It's like saying, well, yeah, of course, it can be seen as free advertising, but you're still playing the whole game and providing at least part of the experience to people, and they're not having to pay for it. And there is an argument, a strong one, I feel, in favor of that not being a good thing. I've actually thought for the last couple of years that this would eventually become a problem. I think anyone with common sense did. And they believed that it was gonna become an issue as games became more and more scripted, more and more story-driven, had more professional voice actors, had these higher quality cutscenes. Over the last few years, there's been a trend to turn cutscenes into movies. You can watch Max Payne 3, the movie. You can watch, hell, Grim Fandango, the movie, was probably the first thing I watched. It was actually a Let's Play done by some of the guys at Something Awful, where they played the game perfectly in a way that could just be watched as a movie. I felt no need or desire to play that game after watching that. And therein lies the problem. If game publishers start to believe that this is the case with a lot of their games, then you could see a situation where they decide to come down on it, because they don't want people watching their game, they want them buying their game. However, the flip side is also true. Yes, Let's Plays are most assuredly marketing for the game. They, more often than not, will expose people to something that they wouldn't have necessarily considered buying in the first place, or may indeed just be the confirmation. A lot of people are now using Let's Play and, of course, first impressions-based content, the way that I do it, to figure out whether or not they actually want a game, because they believe they can't trust the reviews, and they certainly can't trust the marketing and the trailers, and they're totally right, especially when we have less and less demos than we've ever had. It seems like the number of demos released for AAA games is consistently declining. Yes, making a demo is an expensive thing, but it also means that people are a little bit more gun-shy about pulling the trigger on a $60 game when all they have to go on are reviews that they don't trust and marketing material which is most likely misrepresenting the actual product itself. There are also plenty of examples of games that are simply not on the market anymore, and the only real legal way to experience them is by watching somebody play them. So it's a difficult discussion to have. It doesn't have an easy answer, as much as people might like to think otherwise. But here's the thing about the way that Nintendo are doing this, and before I go on, I'd like to read you a statement from my network. This is by one of the higher-ups at the game station. I asked him for information on this, and he provided me with the following response. So this is what the game station, who I believe they're at least the second biggest, if not the largest gaming network on YouTube right now, they believe this. TGS believes that Nintendo does not understand the full repercussions of their actions, and as a result are trying to get in touch with them to understand their goals for the platform and help them achieve those goals in a way that does not result in the disillusion of their biggest advocates. TGS believes that Nintendo does not have any ill intent, but this has resulted from a misunderstanding of the platform. So what does that mean? There's a couple of points I want to pick up from that. The first one being that Nintendo doesn't understand the full repercussions of the actions. Now, if you read Nintendo's statement, that is very believable. The statement doesn't make any sense. Yeah? They're actually making themselves out to be the good guys here. That last line. Unlike other entertainment companies, we've chosen not to block people using our intellectual property. There aren't actually... what do you mean by that? Like, are you talking about entertainment software companies, or are you talking about movie makers, TV producers, music producers? Are you talking about those people? Because that can make sense. But again, I've told you about this. These same rules don't apply. That's static media, non-interactive. This is dynamic interactive media. It's an entirely different kettle of fish, and as a result requires a different approach. But it does seem like they actually believe this is good. It's like, it's part of an ongoing push to ensure Nintendo content is shared across social media platforms in an appropriate and safe manner. It's not going to be, because people are terrified of you. Are you kidding me? You've shown that you're litigious. You've shown that you're willing to use scattershot content ID matching methods to mass claim stuff. Now you might think, oh, well, that doesn't matter to fans. A lot of these fans turned themselves into advocates for Nintendo. And this touches on this idea that this is a massive disillusionment of these guys. This is basically alienating all of the people that were fanatical defenders of you and your brand, who are advocates for your product. Think about it for a second. Think about the guys that really went all in on Nintendo. That you can think of hundreds, if not thousands of channels that are very much staunch Nintendo loyalists. And the reason that their business exists is because of their loyalty to Nintendo. Their loyalty attracted other fans, they built up a fan base, and they were then able to do this full time. And in most cases, that means they were able to produce more higher quality content. Now, I'm not saying that all Let's Players are high-quality content. They clearly are not. However, most of those that got popular are certainly better than some of the absolute dreck that we can find on YouTube on a daily basis. I'm talking about the kind of people that think that filming with a phone is a good idea. Pointing your phone at the screen and then commentating into the speakerphone. That happens. People think that that's a good idea. You can say whatever you like about the PewDiePies, about the Toby Games, about the Yogscats, about the Jesse, about the whoever you want. You can say whatever you like about them, but what you cannot say about them is that it looks that bad. Yeah? Their production values are clearly higher. Clearly higher. And why? Because they're able to do it every day. They're able to do it as a job. Now, if you say you can't make any money off that anymore, what's going to happen? Well, the first logical thing would be to stop making videos about Nintendo games, because you can't risk it. If it's your job to make videos on the internet and you have a following that says, we will watch your ads, and this is all that matters, right? This is what shoots down that bullshit about real job. Yeah? All that matters is that they are watching ads. You are drawing them in to watch those ads. What you are doing doesn't matter. You could be drinking bleach, and if you're getting ad views, it doesn't matter. You as an individual do not get to arbitrate what is and is not acceptable entertainment. That's up to the government, and that's also up to the people that want to watch it, yeah? If it was illegal, fine. You know, the government comes in and says, that's illegal, you can't do that. But aside from that, this entertainment is watched by people, and it is very much a viewer's market in that respect. They choose what they want to watch. That is up to them, and that's about as democratic as you can get. You can despise and hate this kind of content all you please, and you know that I don't like a lot of this content, but it is not my right to say that you can't do it. Is it Nintendo's right? We don't know yet. That's the thing. We have no idea if it's Nintendo's right or not, because the law simply doesn't cover this. It's not advanced enough to understand the concept. This is a fairly recent innovation in terms of the way that media is presented. Let's Play has been around for a long time, started on the SA forums, but lately it's become a bigger deal simply because it has more viewers than it's ever had. You know? People would be pretty surprised to see 5,000 viewers on a video from SA back in the day. I remember because I posted on that forum. I was super psyched when my videos got 5,000. Now, you can't make a living on anything less than like 100,000 views a video. If I did a video and it got 5,000 views, I consider that a complete disaster. But here is what it all comes down to, and I've got a few points that I think you're going to have difficulty arguing against. The first point is this. Content ID matching is very scattershot. It is very scattershot. I don't like the system because it pretty much indiscriminately flags content. It doesn't matter what context the content is used in, whether it be content that is very much protected by US law. What about review, analysis, critique? That is content that is protected by US IP law. You want to know why? Because if it wasn't, then these legal systems would be used to silence dissent. That is really bad for you as the consumer. Think about this for a second, and this has already happened. This is not a slippery slope argument. This has already happened. There have already been journalistic content from these people that has been flagged and can no longer generate revenue. This is content that they did for their job. They did this for their job. It is their piece of journalistic content. In many cases, they were even invited by Nintendo to come and do it. It's like, come to our show and show off our game. This is how the media works. These companies need the media in order to market their products to begin with. So they get home, they make their video, up it goes, everything's fine, and suddenly they can't make any money from it anymore. Are you out of your minds? How could you possibly argue that is good? That means that eventually these companies will simply stop covering Nintendo if this keeps going on. This is bad for several reasons. One, because Nintendo doesn't get any coverage anymore. Yeah, that's pretty bad. The last thing you want is coverage just coming from amateurs. You don't want that to happen, because it becomes lower and lower and lower quality. You're scared about LPs either misrepresenting your brand or actually taking away from the overall sales. Think about how much that would happen if the only Let's Plays on the internet were by people that didn't give a damn. Now, you could argue that if you're just doing it for the money, you don't care. I don't believe there's that many people who are ever really just doing it for the money, because it shows. It shows so obviously. If you do not have passion for the game, it shows. And there are some people that do that, don't get me wrong. But I think the majority are genuinely passionate for the games that they actually LP. And that is particularly true in terms of Nintendo. When I watch videos from, say, Chugga Conroy, who edits his videos, who knows everything about the game, who goes into exhaustive detail and is obviously enthusiastic the entire time about these titles, it is blindingly obvious that this guy is passionate for everything he does, and he really, really appreciates Nintendo and their products. This is the kind of guy that you are shutting down. Why on earth would you do that? Are you out of your minds? One of the biggest advocates you could possibly have that is getting hundreds of thousands of views, who is bringing in that interest and maintaining it, more to the point, while you most certainly are not, unless you are claiming that the Wii U's lineup is good enough to justify the continued loyalty of your customers. And if you are, I think it's about time for you to retire from creating hardware and go into stand-up comedy, because that's funny. Do you want a YouTube landscape where the only people producing content are amateurs who are rushed on time and who simply don't have the means to produce high-quality work? Or indeed the interest. You know, you throw up some cam video of a game on YouTube, you probably don't care. Do you want a situation where it is impossible to preview your games in video form because we cannot get paid for doing so? If you want that situation, then enjoy having no coverage. Enjoy hyping everything yourselves. That costs a lot of money, and it's pretty damn difficult too. That is not a situation that you want. As a consumer, do you want a world where it is impossible for you to find out an honest opinion about a game on YouTube? That is what will happen if this continues, if this kind of stuff ends up getting flagged, because Content ID does not discriminate between review, first impression, and Let's Play. It does not. It doesn't care. If it spots something that it thinks is owned by somebody else, it will flag you, and that is that. We can discuss the validity of Let's Play as a form of media and whether or not it should be a hobby or a profession until the end of time, and we probably won't come up with a solution. We won't have any consensus whatsoever. But the reality of the situation is that there is no way that this is good for the games industry. The money that Nintendo is earning from this is a drop in the bucket compared to how much it costs for them to run that company and how much they make by running that company. It is, however, not a drop in the bucket for those who are creating the videos. It is their livelihood. I don't care if you disagree with their livelihood. You have no power and no control over that. That is none of your business. It takes a very narrow-minded view to think that this is somehow a good thing. It will result in that censorship. It will result in lesser quality content being pervasive on YouTube, even more so than it already is. You think it's bad now? Oh, you have no idea. I especially consider the idea that if you are not allowed to Let's Play Nintendo titles, they will go to somewhere where they can. So you get a larger concentration of the same stuff about the same games. I mean, for God's sake, Slender will never claim this. So expect some more Slender games. Every game that doesn't is going to be the hidey hole where every LPer and their mother goes, and you get ridiculously repetitive nonsense. It lessens variety, it hurts consumers, it is generally damaging for everybody. There is no way that this can be construed as a good thing. Not without some serious bias or some serious lack of understanding. We live in a world where technology is running ahead of the law. And as a direct result, we enter these very strange grey areas. However, what we are seeing are new forms of creativity and new forms of media emerging as a result of the current state of technology. Under no circumstances should we see those suppressed. If we do, then who knows what we'll miss out on. You might think that it's not like it's electricity, it's not like it's a medical innovation, it's just a guy playing a video game. And you're right, it is. But who are you to say where that's going to lead? And more to the point, it's blindingly obvious that people want to watch it. So again, who are you to say that they can't? I would take the same stance as TGS. I don't think Nintendo really knows what it's doing here. I feel that they have woefully misunderstood the situation. It is outrageously stupid to suggest that hurting your biggest and most popular advocates is a good way to do business. This is not an effective way to market your brand. This is not an effective way to earn the trust of your consumer base, and it is certainly not a good way to do business. Regardless of whether or not you're an avid Nintendo LP watcher or you've never touched one in your life and wish that everyone responsible for them fell down a pit and died, you should still be against this because of its repercussions. New media is rapidly outpacing what we've seen in the past, and that is a good thing indeed. Written reviews are becoming obsolete in favor of longer form, more detailed video content that actually shows you what is happening, rather than requires you to simply trust the word of the writer. Consumers are being empowered with more tools than ever to make a good decision. This is resulting in a better market for everybody. Smaller games have new forms of marketing available to them that they never had in the past, a leg up versus the big guys, simply because of the viral nature of YouTube. If we do damage to any of these things, then we do damage to the gaming scene in general. You cannot, in all good conscience, you cannot, with using even an ounce of common sense, believe that this is somehow a good thing. I sincerely hope that this is all a gigantic misunderstanding and that Nintendo realizes what they're doing wrong. Unfortunately, Nintendo being a primarily Japanese company and having seen the result of the Japanese method of doing business, as my channel suffered 2 copyright strikes for a game that was over 20 years old, that other channels were shut down for merely talking about, not even showing a title that was 20 years old, to be stonewalled by a company that I supported through my formative years, through my teenage years, and continue to admire to this day, to see the work of many people who were merely enthusiasts shut down forever, simply because some guy at Sega Japan wanted better search ranking for his trailer, to see the flagrant abuse of copyright law, which was designed as a shield, not as a sword. It was designed to protect, not to assault. To see that twisted perversion of the legal system in action. It's pretty damn disgusting. Oh, but it's all just video games. Yeah, and you're watching a show about it. You got 30 minutes into it. You care, don't pretend that you don't. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. As I announced previously, there was no show this week because I was in LA doing a shoot. Hopefully you will get the results of that very shortly. Now for our OC Remix track of the day. I think it would be appropriate to pick something from Nintendo. Taken from the Heroes vs. Villains OC Remix album, a remix of the opening for Super Metroid, destruction of the space colony, and the theme of Samus Aran Galactic Warrior. This is The Bounty of a Brain by Big Giant Circles. I'll see you next time.